When Kaya and Amara Johnson walked into Roosevelt High's Kung Fu class, they knew it wouldn't be easy being the only two black students, but they never expected the blatant racism that followed. The room fell silent as Tyler and Brett's predatory smirks spread across their faces, imagining all the ways they would break the twins. But what the bullies didn't realize was that they were messing with the wrong girls. These were sisters who came from a family of fighters. The bullies believed they were destroying two helpless beginners, but they couldn't have been more wrong. The Johnson sisters refused to be victims. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The morning air carried the scent of autumn leaves, as Kaya and Amara Johnson walked through the front doors of Roosevelt High School, their matching backpacks slung over their shoulders. The brick building loomed before them, its windows catching the early sunlight like watchful eyes. "You sure about this?" Amara asked, adjusting the strap on her bag as students streamed past them in the hallway. Her voice held that careful tone she used when she was thinking 3 steps ahead. "We talked about this already," Kaya replied, her chin lifted with determination. "We're not going to spend another year being invisible. Besides, martial arts will be good for us." The hallway stretched before them, lined with metal lockers that clanged shut as students grabbed books for first period. Groups clustered around certain lockers, the athletes near the trophy case, the theater kids by the auditorium entrance, the honor students closer to the main office. Everything had its place. Everyone knew their spot. The twins had learned to navigate these invisible boundaries over their 2 years at Roosevelt. But today felt different. Today, they were stepping into new territory. "Look, there's the sign-up sheet." Amara pointed toward a bulletin board near the gymnasium entrance where a small crowd had gathered. They made their way through the morning rush, past conversations about weekend parties they weren't invited to, and college applications they were definitely working on. A few students glanced their way, some with curiosity, others with the practiced indifference that came with high school social survival. "Johnson twins, right?" A tall blonde girl from their chemistry class smiled as they approached the bulletin board. "You guys joining Kung Fu, too?" "That's the plan," Kaya said, taking the pen someone handed her. "Cool. I heard Mr. Peterson's really good. He used to compete professionally or something." The girl gathered her books. "See you guys there." Amara studied the schedule posted next to the sign-up sheet. Tuesdays and Thursdays, 3:30 to 5. We can catch the late bus home. Perfect. Kaya finished writing their names in careful block letters. "Darius is going to be so proud when we tell him we're finally learning real martial arts." The day passed in the usual blur of classes, cafeteria food, and homework assignments. By 3:20, the twins found themselves standing outside the multipurpose room, listening to the sounds of stretching and conversation filtering through the door. "Ready?" Kaya asked. Amara nodded, and they pushed through the door together. The room smelled like floor wax and old sweat. Mirrors lined one wall, and the windows on the opposite side let in slanted afternoon light. About 15 students were scattered across the blue mats, some stretching, others practicing basic forms they'd obviously learned in previous sessions. 2 white senior boys dominated the center of the room. The taller one had sandy brown hair and the kind of athletic build that came from multiple sports seasons. His friend was stockier, with close-cropped hair and arms that suggested he spent serious time in the weight room. The conversations in the room seemed to pause as the twins entered. Not silence exactly, but a shift in energy that made the air feel heavier. "Well, look what we have here," the tall one said, his voice carrying across the room with theatrical surprise. He exchanged a glance with his stocky friend. "I'm Tyler Richardson. This is Brett Morrison." "Kaya and Amara Johnson," Kaya replied, keeping her voice steady. Tyler's smile was sharp around the edges. "Johnson sisters. Interesting. You know, we don't usually get your type in Kung Fu class. Brett stepped closer, arms crossed. Yeah, I thought you people were more into basketball or track. You know, natural athletics. We're here to learn martial arts, Amara said quietly, her voice carefully controlled. Martial arts, Tyler repeated slowly, like he was savoring the words. That's rich. What's next? Gonna tell us you're into classical music too? Before either twin could respond, Mr. Peterson emerged from a small office adjacent to the main room. He was average height with graying hair and the kind of muscular frame that spoke of years of dedicated training. Richardson, Morrison, new students I see, he said, glancing at the twins. We ready to begin? Yes, sir, Tyler said, his demeanor shifting slightly, but his eyes never leaving the twins. Just getting acquainted with our new classmates. Good. Everyone line up for warm-ups. New students, try to keep up. As they moved into formation, Tyler positioned himself directly in front of Kaya. Hope you don't get your hair all messed up, he said, just loud enough for her to hear. I know how important that is to your people. Brett snickered from his spot next to Tyler. Maybe they should have joined step team instead. More their speed. The other students either looked away uncomfortably or pretended not to hear, focusing intently on their stretching routines. During jumping jacks, Tyler's timing was just off enough that he kept bumping into Kaya's space. Sorry, he said each time with mock sincerity. Not used to sharing the mat with newcomers. When they moved into basic forms practice, Brett made sure to position himself where his movements would interfere with Amara's. Oops, my bad, he said, after stepping on her foot. You're just so hard to see back there. Mr. Peterson demonstrated a series of blocking techniques, moving through the rows to offer individual corrections. He spent several minutes with Tyler and Brett, praising their form and suggesting minor adjustments. When he reached the twins, he barely paused. Try to focus more, was all he said before moving on. As class ended and students began filing out, Tyler made sure to walk close behind the twins. See you Thursday, girls. Try not to get lost finding the room again. Brett's parting shot was delivered with a grin. Yeah, and maybe consider tying your hair back next time. This isn't the hood. Walking to the late bus, both twins were quiet until they were safely seated. Well, that was fun, Kaya said, her voice tight with controlled anger. They're not going to make this easy, Amara replied, staring out the window. Good. I wasn't expecting easy. As their bus pulled away from Roosevelt High, neither twin noticed Tyler and Brett watching from the school's front steps, their conversation animated and their laughter carrying on the afternoon air. The real education was about to begin. The harassment started small, the way poison spreads through water, barely noticeable at first, then impossible to ignore. Thursday morning, Kaya found her locker decorated with a printed photo of a gorilla taped to the metal door. No signature, no note, just the image staring back at her as students walked past, pretending not to see. Animals, she muttered, ripping it down and shoving it into her backpack. Amara appeared at her side. What happened? Nothing new. Kaya slammed her locker shut harder than necessary. Just Tyler and Brett being themselves. At lunch, the twins sat at their usual table near the windows, picking at cafeteria pizza while watching other students navigate their own social territories. Tyler's table was directly in their line of sight, prime real estate in the center of the cafeteria, where his voice carried easily across the room. Check it out, Tyler said loudly, holding up his phone. My dad sent me this video of some street fight downtown. Reminded me of someone. Brett's laugh was sharp and deliberate. Yeah, I bet they could give us some pointers. You know, share their natural techniques. Kaya's fork scraped against her tray. You're going to finish your lunch, Amara said quietly, placing a hand on her sister's arm. That's what you're going to do. They're not even trying to be subtle anymore. Good. Makes it easier to document. That afternoon in Kung Fu class, the subtle became explicit. During partner stretching exercises, Tyler made sure to pair with Kaya, while Brett claimed Amara. Flexibility's important in martial arts, Tyler said, pushing down on Kaya's extended leg with more force than necessary. Some people are naturally more bendable than others. Kaya gritted her teeth as he increased the pressure. I'm fine. Really? Because where I come from, we learn proper form. Not that improvised stuff you might be used to. Across the mat, Brett was having a similar conversation with Amara. You know, Kung Fu isn't like street fighting. It requires discipline, control, not just swinging wild and hoping something connects. I understand the difference, Amara replied evenly. Do you, though? Because this is about technique, not just being aggressive. It's an art form. When they switched to basic striking drills, Mr. Peterson paired them up for light contact practice. Control is key, he announced to the class. This isn't about power, it's about precision. Tyler stepped forward as Kaya's partner, his smile predatory. Don't worry, I'll go easy on you. Wouldn't want to damage anything important. The first few exchanges were controlled, careful. Then Tyler's back fist came in harder than necessary, clipping Kaya's shoulder and throwing her off balance. Sorry, he said loudly enough for Mr. Peterson to hear. You moved into it. Got to work on that defensive positioning. Meanwhile, Brett was making similar mistakes with Amara, his kicks and punches consistently finding their mark, while hers were blocked or deflected with ease. You're telegraphing everything, Brett said, with mock helpfulness. Try to be less obvious with your intentions. More subtle, you know? By the end of class, both twins were sporting bruises that would show tomorrow, and Tyler and Brett had established their dominance without Mr. Peterson raising any concerns. Good work today, everyone, Mr. Peterson announced as they filed out. Remember, control and technique beat raw aggression every time. Tyler lingered as the twins gathered their water bottles. Hey, no hard feelings about today, right? It's just practice. You'll get the hang of it eventually. Yeah, Brett added with false sincerity. Rome wasn't built in a day. Neither was proper martial arts training. Walking home from the bus stop, Amara finally spoke up. We need to tell someone. Tell them what? That Tyler and Brett are better at martial arts than we are? That we're getting our butts kicked in practice? You know it's more than that. Kaya kicked at a loose stone on the sidewalk. Yeah, I know. But who's going to believe us? Mr. Peterson was right there the whole time. Mom always said to keep records, document everything. Fine. But I'm not giving them the satisfaction of running away. That evening, they sat at the kitchen table working on homework while their mother prepared dinner. The familiar sounds of home, pots clanging, the television murmuring in the living room, their mother humming softly, created a buffer against the day's harassment. How was Kung Fu? Their mother asked without turning around. Educational, Amara replied carefully. Good. Learning self-defense is important, especially for young women. Your brother always said you girls needed to know how to protect yourselves. Kaya and Amara exchanged glances. Darius had been working double shifts at his security job, and they hadn't seen much of him lately. Part of them wanted to tell him everything, but another part knew he'd probably march down to the school and make everything worse. We're learning a lot, Kaya said finally. Friday brought new challenges. In the hallway between classes, Brett appeared beside Amara as she walked to her locker. Hey, he said conversationally. Tyler was thinking you girls might be more comfortable in a different after-school activity. Something more? Suited to your background? Such as? I don't know. Step team? Gospel choir? Something where you'd fit in better. Amara stopped walking and turned to face him. We like Kung Fu just fine. Brett shrugged. Your choice. Just trying to help you avoid any more embarrassing situations. At lunch, Tyler made sure to walk past their table carrying his tray, managing to bump into Kaya's chair hard enough to make her spill water across her sandwich. "Clumsy me," he said with exaggerated concern. "So sorry. Here, let me help." He reached for napkins from their table, deliberately knocking over Amara's chocolate milk in the process. "Wow, I'm really having an off day," Tyler continued, his voice carrying to nearby tables. "Good thing you girls are so understanding about accidents." By the time he walked away, their entire lunch was ruined and half the cafeteria had witnessed their humiliation. Tuesday's kung fu class brought the harassment to a new level. During forms practice, Tyler positioned himself directly behind Kaya, mimicking her movements with exaggerated, mocking gestures that made Brett snicker. "Nice form," Tyler whispered, during a particularly complex sequence. "Very interpretive." When Mr. Peterson called for sparring practice, the twins found themselves paired against Tyler and Brett once again. "Light contact only," Mr. Peterson reminded the class. "Focus on technique, not power." Tyler's interpretation of light contact involved strikes that consistently found their mark with enough force to leave Kaya gasping. When she tried to return the favor, her punches were either blocked completely or deflected harmlessly. "You're not committing to your techniques," Tyler said loud enough for others to hear. "Too hesitant. Maybe you're just not naturally aggressive enough for this." Meanwhile, Brett was systematically dismantling Amara's defenses, landing clean shots to her ribs and arms while she struggled to mount any effective offense. "Relax," Brett said, with false encouragement. "Stop thinking so much. Try to be more instinctive, more natural." The coded language wasn't lost on either twin, but calling it out would only make them look like they couldn't handle constructive criticism. As class ended, both girls were visibly battered and frustrated. Tyler and Brett, meanwhile, looked fresh and satisfied. "Good effort today," Tyler said as they walked toward the door. "You're really improving. Give it a few more weeks and you might actually land a hit." Brett nodded sagely. "Yeah, just keep working on those fundamentals. Maybe watch some videos online, get back to basics." Walking to the bus stop, Kaya finally exploded. "I can't take much more of this." "We're not quitting," Amara said firmly. "That's exactly what they want." "Then what do you suggest?" "Because this isn't working." Amara was quiet for a long moment, thinking. "Maybe it's time to talk to Darius." "And tell him what?" "That we're getting picked on at school? He'll want to handle it himself." "Maybe that's not such a bad thing." Kaya considered this as their bus pulled up. "You really think he can help?" "I think we need someone in our corner who actually knows how to fight." As they climbed aboard, neither twin noticed Tyler and Brett watching from across the parking lot, their conversation animated, and their expressions suggesting they were planning something new. The education was about to become much more intensive. The breaking point came on a Thursday that started like any other, but ended with blood on concrete and a trip to the emergency room. Kaya noticed them first as she and Amara walked toward the bus stop after kung fu practice. Tyler and Brett were leaning against the chain-link fence that separated the school parking lot from the residential street beyond, their casual postures suggesting they'd been waiting. "We need to go back inside," Amara whispered, slowing her pace. "Too late," Kaya replied. "They've already seen us." Tyler pushed off from the fence with deliberate slowness, Brett falling into step beside him. They moved with the predatory confidence of hunters who'd cornered their prey in familiar territory. "Johnson sisters," Tyler called out, his voice carrying false friendliness. "Perfect timing. We wanted to have a little chat." The twins stopped walking, hands instinctively moving closer to their backpack straps. Around them, the after-school exodus continued. Students heading to cars, buses pulling away, teachers locking up classrooms. normal life proceeding while theirs took a dangerous turn. "We don't have anything to talk about," Amara said, her voice steady despite the fear crawling up her spine. "Sure we do," Brett said, circling slightly to their left while Tyler moved right. "See? We've been thinking about your situation in Kung Fu class." "Our situation?" Kaya's voice held an edge of challenge that made Amara tense. Tyler's smile was all teeth. "Yeah, your integration problem. You girls just don't seem to be fitting in very well. Maybe it's time to consider other options," Brett added helpfully. "Activities more suited to your natural talents." They were hemmed in now, Tyler and Brett forming a loose semicircle that blocked their path to the bus stop. Other students walked past, some glancing over with mild curiosity before looking away. Nobody stopped. "We're not quitting," Kaya said flatly. "No?" Tyler's eyebrows rose in mock surprise. "That's too bad, because continuing might be uncomfortable for everyone involved." Brett nodded sagely. "Yeah, accidents happen in martial arts, especially when people don't know their place." The threat hung in the air like smoke, obvious but deniable. Amara felt her heart rate accelerate as she calculated distances to safety. The school's main entrance was 50 yards away, but it might as well have been 50 miles. "What do you want?" she asked quietly. "Want?" Tyler laughed, the sound harsh in the afternoon air. "We want you to understand reality. This is our school, our club, our territory. You don't belong here. You need to find somewhere else to play Kung Fu," Brett added. "Somewhere more appropriate." Kaya's hands clenched into fists. "Make us!" The words hung between them for a heartbeat, before Tyler's expression shifted from mock friendliness to something uglier. "Make you!" He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne mixed with sweat from practice. "Careful what you ask for." "Kaya," Amara warned, but her sister was past listening. "Yeah, make us," Kaya repeated, louder now. "You've been talking tough for weeks. Let's see what you're actually made of." Tyler's backhanded slap came without warning, the sound sharp as a gunshot in the parking lot. Kaya stumbled backward, hand flying to her cheek as her eyes watered from the impact. "Tyler!" Brett hissed, glancing around nervously. "Not here!" But Tyler was past caring about witnesses. "You want to see what I'm made of? Fine." He grabbed Kaya by the front of her shirt and shoved her hard against the fence. The chain link rattled as she hit it, her backpack sliding off her shoulder to the ground. Amara moved without thinking, stepping forward to help her sister. Brett caught her arm and twisted it behind her back, in a move they'd practiced in class. "Easy," he said in her ear. "Don't make this worse than it has to be." Tyler's face was inches from Kaya's now, his voice low and venomous. "You think you're tough? You think you can come into our space and run your mouth?" "Let go of me," Kaya gasped, trying to push him away. Instead, he tightened his grip and drove his knee into her stomach. She doubled over, gasping for air as pain exploded through her midsection. "Tyler, stop!" Brett said urgently, still holding Amara's arm twisted behind her back. "Someone's going to see." But Tyler was beyond reason. Months of barely controlled racism finally finding an outlet. He grabbed Kaya's hair and yanked her head back up. "You need to learn some respect," he snarled. "Maybe this will help." His fist connected with her ribs, and Kaya cried out as something gave way with a wet crack. The sound galvanized Amara into action. She stomped down hard on Brett's instep and drove her elbow back into his solar plexus. He released her with a grunt of pain, and she spun around to face him. "Stay away from my sister," she said. But Brett was already recovering, his face twisted with anger. "You want to play too?" He grabbed her by the shoulders and threw her sideways into a parked car. She hit the passenger door hard, her hip connecting with the side mirror as she slumped to the ground. Tyler released Kaya, who collapsed against the fence, holding her ribs and breathing shallowly. "There's your lesson," he said, straightening his shirt. "Hope it sticks." Brett kicked Amara's backpack, sending her books scattering across the asphalt. "Next time, mind your own business." They walked away casually, as if nothing had happened, disappearing around the corner of the school building. The twins were left alone in the parking lot, both hurt and shaken. Amara pulled herself upright, using the car's bumper, her hips screaming in protest. "Kaya, you okay?" "Can't breathe, right?" Kaya wheezed, still pressed against the fence. "Something's wrong." Amara limped over to her sister, noting the way Kaya held her left side and the shallow, pained quality of her breathing. "We need to get you to a hospital." "No hospital. Can't afford it." "Kaya, you might have broken ribs. That's serious." They helped each other gather their scattered belongings, moving slowly and carefully. Each step sent fresh waves of pain through their battered bodies, but they managed to make it to the bus stop, just as the late bus arrived. The ride home was a blur of pain and whispered conversations. Other passengers glanced at them occasionally. Two obviously injured girls huddled together in a back seat, but nobody asked questions. Their mother was still at work when they got home, which was both a blessing and a curse. They didn't have to explain their injuries immediately, but they also didn't have an adult to help them decide what to do next. "Ice," Amara said, collapsing onto the living room couch. "Get ice for your ribs." Kaya shuffled to the kitchen, moving like an old woman. When she returned with 2 bags of frozen peas, her face was pale and drawn. "This is bad," she said, settling carefully beside her sister. "Really bad." "I know." They sat in silence for a while, processing what had happened. The ice helped with the immediate pain, but it couldn't touch the deeper hurt. The knowledge that they'd been beaten simply for existing in a space someone else claimed as their own. "We have to tell Darius," Amara said finally. "He'll kill them." "Maybe they deserve it." Kaya considered this, pressing the frozen peas more firmly against her ribs. "You think he'll help us?" "I think he'll teach us to make sure this never happens again." When their mother came home 2 hours later, she found them still on the couch, bruised and battered, but determined. The conversation that followed was difficult. Tears, anger, threats to call the police, demands to know why they hadn't reported the harassment earlier. But eventually, she made the call they'd been hoping for. "Darius, you need to come over. Now, your sisters have something to tell you." Darius arrived 20 minutes after their mother's call, his security uniform still crisp despite the end of a long shift. The sight of his sisters, Kaya hunched over with ice pressed to her ribs, Amara's hip already purpling with bruises, transformed his face into something their mother recognized from years past. "Who did this?" His voice was quiet, controlled, but underneath ran a current of barely contained fury. "2 boys from school," their mother said, before either twin could speak. "Tyler and Brett. They've been harassing the girls for weeks." Darius knelt beside the couch, his trained eye cataloging their injuries with professional efficiency. "How bad are the ribs?" "Hurts to breathe deep," Kaya admitted. "But I can move okay. We need to get you checked out. Could be fractures." "Already talked to them about that," their mother interjected. "They refused, said we can't afford the emergency room bills." Darius was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working as he processed this information. Finally, he looked up at his mother. "Call Marcus. Tell him I need to borrow his car. We're going to the urgent care clinic on 5th Street. They take payment plans." "Darius," Amara started. "No arguments. You don't mess around with rib injuries." He stood, pacing to the window and back. "But first, I need to know everything. Start from the beginning." The next hour was painful in ways that had nothing to do with their physical injuries. The twins recounted weeks of harassment, racist comments disguised as friendly advice, the systematic campaign to drive them out of Kung Fu class. They told him about the monkey picture on Kaya's locker, the accidental spills at lunch, the increasingly violent sparring sessions where Tyler and Brett used their size and experience to inflict punishment. Darius listened without interruption, his expression growing darker with each detail. When they finished, he was quiet for several minutes. "Why didn't you call the police?" their mother asked finally. "Because they won't do anything," Kaya said bitterly. "You think Officer Martinez is going to arrest the quarterback's son for saying mean things to the black girls? Even if we could prove what they said, which we can't." Amara nodded in agreement. "Plus, Tyler's dad owns 3 car dealerships in town. Brett's mom is on the school board. They'll lawyer up and claim it was just teenage drama. Maybe suggest we're making it all about race to get attention." "The system's not built for us, Mama," Kaya added quietly. "It's built to protect people like them. We report this, they'll spin it, so we're the troublemakers who can't handle a little competition." Their mother's face reflected the painful truth of this assessment. She'd lived long enough to know how these situations typically played out. Darius finally spoke, his voice carrying the weight of hard experience. "They're right. I've seen it before. Rich white kids get the benefit of the doubt, especially when it's their word against ours. Even with witnesses, people find ways to explain it away." "So, what do?" their mother asked. "We handle it ourselves." Darius turned to face his sisters. "But first, we make sure you're not seriously hurt. Then we start your real education." At the urgent care clinic, X-rays confirmed what Darius had suspected. 2 cracked ribs for Kaya, severe bruising but no fractures for Amara. The doctor, a tired-looking woman in her 50s, asked the standard questions about how the injuries occurred. "Martial arts accident," Darius said smoothly. "Sparring practice got a little intense." The doctor looked skeptical, but didn't press. She'd seen enough domestic violence cases to recognize the signs, but she also knew when families had their stories straight. Meanwhile, back at Roosevelt High, Tyler and Brett were dealing with their own aftermath. Tyler paced his bedroom, adrenaline still coursing through his system from the afternoon's violence. "You think anyone saw?" Brett asked, sprawled across Tyler's desk chair. "Doesn't matter. Who's going to believe them over us?" Tyler's confidence was returning as the immediate rush of violence faded. Besides, they had it coming, walking around like they owned the place. Brett nodded, but something in his expression suggested he wasn't entirely comfortable with how far things had escalated. "Maybe we should cool it for a while. Let things settle down." "Cool it?" Tyler stopped pacing, his voice sharp with disbelief. "They need to learn their lesson. This is just the beginning. I'm just saying, if someone reports what? That they got hurt during martial arts practice? That's what happened, right? Accidents happen in contact sports." Brett considered this, his earlier doubts fading as Tyler's logic took hold. "Yeah, you're right. Accidents happen." Back at the Johnson house, Darius was having a very different conversation with his sisters. They sat around the kitchen table, the urgency of the hospital visit replaced by the more complex task of planning their response. "First thing you need to understand," Darius said, his security uniform replaced by jeans and an old army t-shirt, "is that this isn't about revenge. This is about respect. They need to learn that there are consequences for their actions." "What kind of consequences?" Kaya asked, her ribs wrapped in medical tape that pulled tight with each breath. "The kind that makes them think twice before targeting someone else." Darius leaned forward, his expression serious. "But we do this smart. No witnesses, no evidence, no trail back to us." Amara shifted uncomfortably. "You're talking about fighting them. I'm talking about teaching you to defend yourselves. What happened today can't happen again, because next time you might not be so lucky." Their mother, who had been quiet since returning from the clinic, finally spoke up. "What are you planning, Darius?" "Training. Real training, not that performance art they're teaching at school." He looked at each of his family members in turn. "These boys think they can intimidate us because they assume we don't know how to fight back. Time to show them how wrong they are." "This could make things worse," their mother warned. "Could it?" Darius's voice carried the weight of someone who'd spent years dealing with bullies in different forms. "Or could it finally make them understand that we're not victims they can push around whenever they feel like it?" Kaya winced as she leaned forward, but her voice was steady. "What do we need to do?" "Tomorrow, after school, meet me in the backyard. Wear clothes you can move in, and prepare to learn things they don't teach in that fancy kung fu class." Amara looked uncertain. "Darius, we're not trying to become fighters. We just want them to leave us alone." "Sometimes those are the same thing," he replied quietly. "Sometimes the only way to get respect is to be willing to demand it." Outside, the afternoon was settling into evening, the autumn air carrying the promise of colder days ahead. Neither the twins nor Darius could have predicted how completely their lives were about to change, or how the lessons learned in their backyard would eventually transform not just their own situation, but the entire culture of Roosevelt High School. The real education was about to begin. The next afternoon, Darius was waiting in their backyard when the twins arrived home from school, having changed out of his security uniform into workout clothes. He'd cleared a space on the grass and set up a small table with water bottles and first aid supplies. "How do you feel?" he asked, noting the careful way Kaya moved. "Sore, but functional," she replied, setting down her backpack. "Good. Pain is a teacher, but it shouldn't be a cripple." He gestured for them to sit on the back steps. "Before we start, I need you to understand something. What I'm going to teach you isn't sport martial arts. It's not about forms or tradition or impressing judges." Amara settled beside her sister, wincing slightly. "What is it about?" "Survival. Ending fights quickly and definitively." Darius's expression was serious. "This is about making sure that when someone puts their hands on you, they regret it immediately and completely." For the next hour, he walked them through basics that Mr. Peterson had never mentioned. How to use their thumbs to attack pressure points behind the ears. Where to strike to collapse someone's breathing. How to use their smaller size and lower center of gravity as advantages rather than weaknesses. "Forget everything you learned about fair fighting," Darius said, demonstrating a knee strike that would incapacitate an opponent. "There's no such thing as fair when someone's trying to hurt you." Kaya absorbed the lessons eagerly, her anger from the previous day channeling into focused aggression. Each technique felt like a piece of armor being added to her arsenal. "Remember, you're not trying to win a tournament," Darius explained as he showed them how to break free from various grabs. "You're trying to create enough damage that your opponent can't continue." Amara approached the training more analytically, asking questions about timing and positioning. "What if they're expecting us to fight back now?" "Then you use that against them. Expectation can be a weakness if you know how to exploit it." 3 weeks into their backyard training, the changes were becoming apparent. The twins moved differently through the school hallways, shoulders straighter, eyes more direct, an air of quiet confidence replacing their previous wariness. Tyler noticed it first during lunch on a Tuesday. The way Kaya looked at him when he walked past their table wasn't the same mixture of anger and fear he'd grown accustomed to. Instead, her gaze was steady, evaluating, like she was measuring him for something. "You see that?" he asked Brett as they took their seats across the cafeteria. "See what?" "The way she looked at me, like she wasn't scared anymore." Brett glanced over at the twins' table, where both girls were eating lunch and talking quietly. "So? Maybe they're finally getting the message. Or maybe they're planning something." This possibility hadn't occurred to Brett, and he found it unsettling. Like what? They're not going to report us. Too much time has passed, and they're not stupid enough to try anything physical. Tyler wasn't so sure. Something had shifted in the dynamic, and he couldn't put his finger on exactly what. Meanwhile, back in the twins' training sessions, Darius was pushing them harder. "Speed and surprise are your best weapons," he said, holding pads for them to strike. "Tyler and Brett are stronger, but they're also overconfident. They think they know what to expect from you." Kaya's punches were getting sharper, more focused. "What if we hurt them seriously?" "What if they hurt you seriously?" Darius countered. "Because that's where this is heading. They proved they're willing to escalate to violence. You need to be ready to match that escalation and exceed it." Amara landed a solid combination on the pads, her technique improving daily. How do we know when we're ready? When you stop asking that question. The answer came sooner than expected. Thursday's Kung Fu class brought a new level of hostility from Tyler and Brett. They'd apparently decided that their previous lesson hadn't been effective enough. "Johnson sisters," Tyler said with false friendliness as the twins entered the multipurpose room. "How are those injuries healing up?" "Fine, thanks," Kaya replied evenly. "Good to hear. Wouldn't want any lingering effects from your accident." Mr. Peterson called the class to order, and they moved through warm-ups with the usual undercurrent of tension. But during partner drills, Tyler's aggression was more pronounced than usual. "You seem different," he said, as they practiced blocking techniques. "More confident. That's dangerous." "Dangerous? How?" Kaya asked, deflecting his strike and countering with one of her own. "Confidence without skill is just arrogance, and arrogance gets people hurt." His next attack came faster and harder than the drill called for, but this time Kaya was ready. Instead of trying to simply block, she redirected his force while stepping inside his guard, exactly as Darius had taught her. Tyler stumbled slightly, off balance and surprised. Lucky counter. Maybe. For the first time in weeks, Kaya felt like she was holding her own. The techniques Darius had drilled into her were becoming instinctive, and she could see opportunities in Tyler's attacks that she'd never noticed before. Across the room, Amara was having a similar experience with Brett. His attempts to overwhelm her with aggressive combinations were meeting more sophisticated defenses, and she was beginning to land clean counters of her own. By the end of class, both Tyler and Brett were visibly frustrated. The easy dominance they'd established was eroding, and they didn't understand why. "Same time Thursday," Tyler said as they filed out, but his usual smugness was replaced by something harder. "We'll see how much you've really learned." Walking to the bus stop, the twins felt a shift in the air around them. Other students who had previously avoided eye contact now nodded respectfully. The invisible bubble of fear that had surrounded them for weeks was beginning to dissipate. "They're scared," Kaya observed. "Good," Amara replied. "They should be." That evening, Darius pushed them through their most intensive training session yet. "You're ready for the next phase," he announced, after watching them spar against each other with controlled aggression. "Which is what?" Amara asked, toweling sweat from her face. "Taking back your space. They made this personal when they put their hands on you. Time to remind them what that costs." The twins exchanged glances, understanding passing between them without words. They'd spent weeks learning to defend themselves, but defense was only half the equation. "What do you want us to do?" Kaya asked. Darius smiled, and for the first time in weeks, it reached his eyes. "I want you to show them exactly who they've been messing with." The announcement came during Tuesday's Kung Fu class, posted on the bulletin board near the entrance where everyone would see it. Principal Hayes had authorized the first annual Roosevelt High Interschool Martial Arts Showcase, scheduled for the following month in the gymnasium. "This is our chance to show what we've learned," Mr. Peterson announced to the assembled class. "Representatives from 3 other schools will be participating, along with our own students. It's a great opportunity to demonstrate our program's excellence." Tyler's eyes lit up with anticipation. "Will there be rankings, awards?" "Individual recognition, yes. But more importantly, it's a chance to represent Roosevelt with honor and skill." The twins exchanged glances across the room. This was the opportunity they'd been waiting for. A public forum where they could prove themselves on equal terms. After class, they lingered near the bulletin board, reading the details. The showcase would include forms demonstrations and controlled sparring matches, with participation limited to students who had been training for at least 6 months. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" Kaya asked quietly. "That we're going to sign up?" "Absolutely." But when they returned Thursday afternoon, their names had been conspicuously omitted from the participation list that Mr. Peterson had posted. Tyler and Brett's names were prominently featured, along with several other senior students. "Excuse me, Mr. Peterson." Amara approached the instructor after class. "I think there was a mistake with the showcase list. Our names aren't on there." Mr. Peterson barely looked up from his clipboard. "That's not a mistake. The showcase is for experienced students only. You girls haven't been training long enough to represent the program publicly." "We've been here for 2 months," Kaya protested. "The announcement said 6 months minimum, but it also said exceptions could be made for demonstrated skill." "Which you haven't demonstrated," Tyler interjected, appearing beside them with Brett in tow. "This is about representing the school. You need students who won't embarrass the program." "We can hold our own," Amara said steadily. Brett snorted. "Against who? Each other? This is about real competition, not practice drills." "Then let's find out," Kaya said, her voice carrying an edge that made everyone in the room look up. "Right now, full contact sparring. If we lose, we accept being excluded. If we win, our names go on the list." The room went completely silent. Even Mr. Peterson seemed caught off guard by the directness of the challenge. Tyler's smile was sharp and predatory. "You want to spar? Full contact?" "That's what I said." "Fine." Tyler began removing his outer shirt, revealing the muscled torso that had intimidated opponents for 4 years. "But when you get hurt, don't come crying about it." "Same goes for you," Kaya replied, pulling her hair back into a tight ponytail. The other students formed a loose circle around the mat, sensing they were about to witness something significant. Mr. Peterson looked uncomfortable, but didn't intervene. He was curious to see how this would play out. "Standard rules," he announced reluctantly. 3-minute rounds, full contact, but controlled. First to submit or be unable to continue loses. Tyler stepped onto the mat with the confidence of someone who'd never lost a school sparring match. Kaya faced him across the center line, her stance lower and more balanced than he remembered. "Last chance to back down," Tyler said, rolling his shoulders. "I won't go easy on you this time." "Good," Kaya replied. "Neither will I." The fight began with Tyler's usual strategy. Aggressive forward pressure designed to overwhelm his opponent through superior size and strength. But instead of backing up as she had for weeks, Kaya moved laterally, using angles and timing to avoid his attacks while landing quick counters. Her first solid hit came 30 seconds in, a palm strike to his solar plexus that doubled him over and drew gasps from the watching students. Tyler recovered quickly, but his expression had shifted from confident to concerned. "Lucky shot," he wheezed, but his next combination was more cautious. Kaya used his hesitation to press her advantage, flowing between defense and offense, with a fluidity that had the room buzzing with excitement. When Tyler tried to grab her for a takedown, she used his momentum to throw him across the mat, with a technique that had everyone talking at once. "What was that?" someone called out. "Where did she learn that?" another voice added. Tyler rolled to his feet, his face flushed with embarrassment and anger. "You've been holding back." "No," Kaya said, settling back into her stance. "I've been learning." The second round was even more decisive. Tyler's frustration led to wilder, more desperate attacks that Kaya systematically countered and punished. By the time he submitted to a chokehold that had appeared out of nowhere, the room was buzzing with amazed conversation. "Holy crap! Did you see that? She destroyed him! Where did the Johnson twins learn to fight like that?" Meanwhile, on the adjacent mat, Amara was demonstrating her own evolution against Brett. Where Tyler had relied on aggression, Brett favored technical precision. But Amara matched his technique while adding unpredictable elements he couldn't counter. Her victory was quieter, but no less decisive. A submission hold that left Brett tapping frantically while the room erupted in excited chatter. Mr. Peterson stood in the center of both mats, looking stunned. That was impressive. Very impressive. The twins helped their defeated opponents to their feet with respectful bows, showing the kind of sportsmanship that made their victories even more meaningful to the watching students. "So," Kaya said, slightly out of breath but composed, "do our names go on the list?" Mr. Peterson looked around the room at the faces of students who had just witnessed something extraordinary. "I think that can be arranged." Tyler and Brett left the room without speaking, their humiliation complete and public. The other students crowded around the twins, asking questions about their training and techniques. "You've been practicing outside of class," Mr. Peterson observed, as the room began to empty. "Every day," Amara confirmed. "We take this seriously." "I can see that. Your brother teach you those moves?" The twins exchanged glances. "Our brother taught us that there's always more to learn." Walking to the bus stop, they were accompanied by several other students who wanted to continue discussing what they'd witnessed. For the first time since joining the program, the twins felt like they belonged. But 20 minutes later, in the school parking lot, Tyler was having a very different conversation with Brett. "This isn't over," Tyler said, his voice tight with suppressed rage. "They humiliated us in front of everyone. Maybe we should just let it go," Brett suggested, still nursing his bruised ego. "They won fair and square." "Won?" Tyler's voice rose. "That's only because it was a controlled environment. That wouldn't happen outside of the school." Brett looked uncertain. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking they need to learn that there are consequences for making us look like fools." "Tyler, maybe we should..." "Maybe we should what? Let them get away with it? Let everyone think they're better than us?" Tyler's face was flushed with anger and embarrassment. "No way!" As their bus pulled away from school, the twins were unaware of the conversation taking place in the parking lot. They were too busy planning their training for the showcase, unaware that their victory had just made their situation considerably more dangerous. The revenge came faster than anyone expected. Friday afternoon, as the twins walked through the nearly empty hallways after staying late to work on a chemistry project, they found Tyler and Brett waiting by their lockers. But this time, the boys weren't alone. They'd brought reinforcements in the form of 2 other seniors from the football team. "Johnson sisters," Tyler called out, his voice echoing in the deserted corridor. "Perfect timing." Kaya and Amara slowed their approach, immediately recognizing the setup. 4 against 2, in an isolated part of the school where teachers had already gone home for the weekend. "What do you want, Tyler?" Amara asked, her voice steady despite the adrenaline starting to surge through her system. "What do I want?" Tyler's laugh was harsh and bitter. "I want to finish what we started in the parking lot. Teach you girls your proper place." "We know our place," Kaya replied, setting down her backpack carefully. "Right here, same as everyone else." Brett stepped forward, flanked by the 2 football players, both bigger and broader than Tyler. "That's the problem right there. You think you belong where you don't. This school, this program, this whole world wasn't made for people like you." "People like us?" Amara's voice carried a dangerous edge. One of the football players, a massive senior with arms like tree trunks, grinned nastily. "You know exactly what he means. Time you learn to stay in your lane." Tyler's mask of false politeness finally dropped completely. "We tried to be nice about it, tried to give you hints, but you're too stupid to take them." "Maybe they need a more direct lesson," Brett added, cracking his knuckles. "Something that'll stick this time." 4-on-2, Kaya said, calculating distances and angles like Darius had taught her. "That seemed fair to you?" The second football player, stockier but just as intimidating, sneered. "Fair? Nothing fair about you people being here in the first place." Tyler stepped closer, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "This is what happens when you forget where you belong. When you embarrass us in front of everyone." The attack came without warning. Tyler lunged forward with a straight punch aimed at Kaya's face, while Brett moved to flank her from the left. Simultaneously, both football players charged at Amara, clearly intending to overwhelm her through pure size and aggression. But the twins had been preparing for exactly this scenario. Kaya slipped Tyler's punch by inches, feeling the wind from his fist as it passed her cheek. She grabbed his extended arm and used his momentum to throw him into the lockers with a crash that echoed through the hallway. Tyler hit the metal doors hard and slumped to the ground, momentarily stunned. Brett tried to capitalize on Kaya's engagement with Tyler by attacking from her blind side, but she'd been tracking his movement in her peripheral vision. As his fist came toward her ribs, she twisted away and drove her knee up into his solar plexus. Brett doubled over, gasping for air, and Kaya finished with an elbow strike to the back of his head that dropped him to his knees. Meanwhile, Amara faced the more challenging task of handling both football players simultaneously. The first one, the massive senior, tried to tackle her around the waist, using his superior size to overpower her. But Amara had learned to use an opponent's strength against them. She dropped her center of gravity and pivoted, letting his momentum carry him past her, while she drove her elbow into his ribs as he went by. The impact made him grunt in pain, but he was far from finished. He spun around and swung a haymaker that would have knocked Amara unconscious if it had connected. Instead, she ducked low and swept his legs, sending all 200 pounds of him crashing to the floor. The stockier football player saw his chance and moved in while Amara was focused on his teammate. He managed to grab her from behind in a bear hug, pinning her arms to her sides and lifting her off the ground. "Got you now," he grunted in her ear, squeezing tighter. But Darius had prepared them for this exact situation. Amara drove her head backward into his nose, feeling cartilage crunch against her skull. His grip loosened immediately, and she broke free by driving her elbows back into his ribs in rapid succession. Tyler was back on his feet now, wiping a trickle of blood from where his head had hit the locker. His face was twisted with rage and humiliation. "You think you're clever? Let's see how clever you are now." He came at Kaya with a more measured approach this time, using the martial arts techniques he'd learned in class. His combination was technically sound: jab, cross, hook. But Kaya had been sparring with Darius every afternoon for weeks. She slipped the first two punches and caught the hook on her forearm, then countered with a palm strike to his chest that sent him staggering backward. Brett was struggling to his feet, still winded from the knee to his solar plexus. "You're gonna pay for this," he wheezed, but his movements were slow and uncoordinated. Amara stepped toward him with fluid grace. "We already paid. For weeks, remember?" She feinted high, then swept low, taking Brett's legs out from under him. He hit the floor hard, his head bouncing off the linoleum with a dull thud. The massive football player was back up, moving more cautiously now, but still dangerous. He charged at both twins simultaneously, trying to use his bulk to overwhelm them through sheer force. But they moved in perfect coordination, splitting apart at the last second, so he passed between them. As he stumbled forward off balance, Kaya caught him with a knee to the thigh that buckled his leg, while Amara drove her fist into his kidney. He went down hard, crying out in pain as he curled up on the floor. Tyler made one last desperate attempt, pulling out every technique Mr. Peterson had ever taught him. He launched into an impressive combination: kicks, punches, and grappling attempts that showed real skill and training. For a moment, it looked like he might actually land something significant on Kaya. But weeks of training with someone who'd learned to fight on the streets had given her tools that no traditional martial arts class could provide. She absorbed his attack, deflecting what she couldn't avoid, then caught him in a submission hold that had him tapping frantically within seconds. "Enough," she said, releasing him. "It's over." The stockier football player tried to get back up, but Amara was already moving. She caught him with a precise strike to a pressure point that dropped him back to the floor, groaning and holding his shoulder. Within 5 minutes, it was over. Tyler knelt on the floor, struggling to catch his breath and cradling his arm. Brett lay flat on his back, staring at the ceiling with unfocused eyes. Both football players were down, one holding his ribs and whimpering, the other curled up and not moving. The twins stood in the center of the hallway, breathing hard but victorious. Their clothes were slightly disheveled, and they had minor scrapes from the encounter, but they were standing while their attackers were scattered across the floor in various states of defeat. "Anyone else want to have a conversation about our place?" Kaya asked, looking around at the fallen boys. Tyler tried to push himself up, but collapsed back to his knees. This isn't possible." "It just happened," Amara said firmly. "Next time you want to put your hands on someone, remember this moment." That's when they heard the footsteps, multiple pairs of adult shoes clicking rapidly down the hallway. The twins turned to see Principal Hayes, 2 teachers, and the school security guard hurrying toward them. "What is going on here?" Principal Hayes demanded, taking in the scene. 4 boys on the ground in various states of distress, 2 girls standing over them looking winded but unharmed. "We were attacked," Amara said simply. "We defended ourselves." "Attacked?" One of the teachers, Ms. Rodriguez from the math department, looked skeptical as she surveyed the aftermath. 4 boys attacked 2 girls? "That's exactly what happened," Kaya replied, her voice steady. Tyler struggled to speak from his position on the floor. They started it. Came at us with something." "What something?" The security guard looked around the hallway. "I don't see any weapons." Brett pointed weakly at the twins. "They had to have. No way they could." "Everyone to my office, now," Principal Hayes commanded. "Security, help those boys to the nurse's office first. I want everyone checked out before we have any conversations." As the security guard and teachers helped the 4 boys to their feet, Tyler caught Amara's eye. His expression was a mixture of humiliation, rage, and something that looked almost like fear. "This isn't over," he whispered as he was helped past them. "Yes," Amara replied quietly. "It is." The principal's office had never felt smaller. Principal Hayes sat behind his desk, fingers steepled as he studied the incident reports spread before him. The twins sat across from him, flanked by their mother, who had arrived 20 minutes earlier with fire in her eyes and questions that demanded answers. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," Principal Hayes said, his voice carefully measured. 4 male students, all of them athletes, all of them with clean disciplinary records, were found injured in the hallway. And you 2 are claiming self-defense. "We're not claiming anything," their mother interjected before either twin could speak. "We're stating facts. 4 boys attacked my daughters. My daughters defended themselves. The evidence speaks for itself." "The evidence," Principal Hayes repeated, glancing at the security footage screenshots on his desk. "Yes, let's talk about that." He turned his computer monitor toward them, showing a frozen image from the hallway camera. The timestamp showed the exact moment the fight began. Tyler's fist inches from Kaya's face, Brett flanking from the left, both football players converging on Amara. This shows 4 boys attacking 2 girls, their mother said, leaning forward. What more evidence do you need? The problem, Mrs. Johnson, is what happened after this frame. Your daughters didn't just defend themselves, they systematically defeated 4 boys who are significantly larger and stronger. That raises questions. Kaya felt her jaw tighten. Questions about what? About whether this was really self-defense, or if you girls were looking for a fight. The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Amara exchanged glances with her sister, recognizing the trap being laid for them. Let me understand your logic, their mother said, her voice dangerously quiet. Because my daughters were able to successfully defend themselves, they must be the aggressors. I'm simply trying to understand how 2 junior girls managed to incapacitate 4 senior boys without sustaining any significant injuries themselves. Maybe you should be asking why 4 senior boys thought they could attack 2 junior girls without consequences, Kaya said, unable to contain herself any longer. Principal Hayes's expression hardened. Miss Johnson, I'd be very careful about your tone right now. My tone? Kaya's voice rose. My tone is the problem? Not the racist harassment we've been reporting for weeks? Not the 4 boys who cornered us in an empty hallway? Racist harassment is a serious accusation. It's not an accusation, Amara exploded, standing up so quickly her chair scraped against the floor. It's documented fact. We filed reports. We told teachers. We did everything we were supposed to do, and nobody did anything. Their mother placed a restraining hand on Amara's arm, but her own voice was steel. My daughters have been systematically harassed by these boys since they joined the Kung Fu program. They've been called names, had their belongings destroyed, been physically intimidated in class while their instructor watched and did nothing. Those are serious allegations. They're not allegations. They're facts. And now that my daughters finally stood up for themselves, you want to punish them for being too effective at it? Meanwhile, across town, Tyler sat in his family's living room facing his own uncomfortable conversation. His father, a successful businessman who had built his reputation on controlling narratives, paced behind the leather couch with barely contained fury. 4 of you, his father said, his voice tight with disbelief. 4 of you couldn't handle 2 girls. Dad, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. You and your friends got your rear ends handed to you by a couple of girls, and now the whole school knows about it. Do you have any idea how this reflects on our family? Tyler's mother sat in her usual chair, perfectly dressed and perfectly mortified. The Richardson name has never been associated with this kind of embarrassment. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, Tyler said weakly. They were supposed to back down. Well, they didn't, did they? His father stopped pacing and fixed his son with a stare that could freeze water. Instead, you gave them exactly what they needed to destroy your reputation and ours along with it. Back at school, the story was spreading like wildfire through social media and text messages. Students who had witnessed the aftermath were sharing details, and the narrative was not favorable to Tyler and his crew. Did you see the video? One girl whispered to her friend as they walked past the Johnson twins' lockers. What video? Someone got footage of them walking out after the fight. Tyler and those football players could barely stand up, but the Johnson girls looked fine. No way. I'm telling you, they destroyed them. Completely destroyed them. The buzz in the hallways had shifted dramatically. Students who had previously avoided the twins now nodded respectfully when they passed. The invisible barrier of fear that had surrounded Tyler and Brett for years was crumbling, and everyone could sense it. In the principal's office, the conversation had reached a crucial juncture. What I'm prepared to do, Principal Hayes said, is suspend all 6 students for 1 week while we conduct a full investigation. Absolutely not, their mother said immediately. My daughters were attacked. They defended themselves. They will not be punished for refusing to be victims. Mrs. Johnson, I understand your position, but no, you don't understand my position at all. She stood up, her presence suddenly filling the room. My position is that this school has failed to protect my daughters from racist harassment for months. Now that they've protected themselves, you want to punish them for it. That's not happening. Principal Hayes shifted uncomfortably. If you're not satisfied with the school's handling of this situation, you're certainly free to pursue other options. Other options like the media, like the district office, like the NAACP? Her voice carried the weight of someone prepared to go to war. Trust me, I'm already considering all of those options. The threat was not subtle, and Principal Hayes clearly understood its implications. A story about black girls being punished for defending themselves against racist attackers would not reflect well on the school or his leadership. Perhaps, he said carefully, we could handle this as an internal matter. Counseling sessions, conflict resolution, that sort of thing. For my daughters, they don't need counseling. They need the boys who attacked them to face consequences. And what consequences would you consider appropriate? Their mother smiled, but there was no warmth in it. That's not my job to decide. That's yours. But I'll tell you what's not appropriate. Punishing the victims while their attackers get to play "the boys will be boys" card. 20 minutes later, they walked out of the school together, the twins flanking their mother like bodyguards. The hallways buzzed with whispered conversations that stopped abruptly when they passed. "What happens now?" Amara asked as they reached the parking lot. "Now we wait," their mother replied, "and we make sure everyone knows exactly what happened here today." "Mom," Kaya said quietly, "thank you. Don't thank me yet. This is far from over." The real battle was just beginning. The video changed everything. It surfaced on Monday morning, uploaded anonymously to every major social media platform with a caption that read, "Racist bullies get what they deserve. Roosevelt High School." The footage, captured by a student's phone through a classroom window, showed the entire hallway fight in crystal-clear detail. Within hours, it had been shared thousands of times. The video told the story better than any witness statement could. 4 boys cornering 2 girls. Tyler's racist taunts clearly audible. The coordinated attack. And then the systematic dismantling of the aggressors by 2 sisters who refused to be victims. By noon, local news trucks were parked outside Roosevelt High School. This is Channel 7 News with breaking coverage of a disturbing incident at Roosevelt High School, where video has emerged showing 4 male students launching what appears to be a racially motivated attack on 2 female students. Principal Hayes stood at his office window, watching reporters set up cameras on the front lawn while his phone rang incessantly. Every call was the same: school board members demanding explanations, parents asking if their children were safe, media outlets requesting interviews. The knock on his door came at 12:47 p.m. "Come in." Superintendent Williams entered without ceremony, followed by 2 school board members and the district's legal counsel. Their expressions were grim. "We have a problem," Superintendent Williams said, placing a tablet on the desk. The video was queued up, ready to play for the 100th time that day. "I'm aware of the situation. Are you? Because I've got the NAACP calling my office, I've got parents threatening to pull their kids out of school, and I've got a viral video showing systematic racism being ignored by this administration." Principal Hayes felt the walls closing in. "The investigation is ongoing." "The investigation is over," one of the school board members interrupted. "The video is all the investigation we need." Meanwhile, across town, Tyler Richardson sat in his bedroom staring at his phone as notifications poured in. The video had been shared in group chats, posted on Instagram stories, and was trending on Twitter with hashtags like "Jack Racist Bullies" and "Uchada Justice for the Johnson Twins." His social media accounts were flooded with comments ranging from mockery to outright hostility. Screenshots of his face during the fight, twisted with racist hatred just before he got dropped by a girl half his size, had become memes. The doorbell rang downstairs, followed by his father's voice raised in anger. Through his window, Tyler could see news vans lining their usually quiet street. His phone buzzed with a text from Brett. "My dad says we're transferring schools. This is insane." But transferring wouldn't help. The video was everywhere now. College recruiters who had been interested in Tyler's athletic abilities were quietly removing him from their lists. The private school his parents were considering had already indicated he wouldn't be welcome. At the Johnson house, the atmosphere was dramatically different. The twins sat at their kitchen table, fielding calls from reporters, civil rights organizations, and martial arts academies who wanted to offer them scholarships. "Channel 4 wants to do an interview tomorrow," their mother announced, hanging up the phone. "The local NAACP chapter wants to honor you girls at their next meeting." "This feels surreal," Amara said, scrolling through messages of support on her phone. "It's justice," Kaya replied firmly. Finally, Darius arrived as the evening news began, bringing takeout dinner and wearing the biggest smile they'd seen from him in months. "You see this?" He gestured at the television, where their story was the lead segment. "The whole country's talking about you two." The news anchor's voice filled the room. The video, which appears to show a racially motivated attack, has sparked outrage across social media. The 4 male students involved have been identified, and sources tell us they may face both disciplinary action and potential criminal charges. Criminal charges? Amara looked surprised. Their mother nodded grimly. The district attorney's office called this afternoon. They're considering assault charges against all 4 boys. Apparently, the video makes their intent pretty clear. On screen, the news was interviewing Dr. Sarah Chen, a local civil rights attorney. "What we see in this video is not a schoolyard fight. This is a coordinated attack by 4 individuals who targeted these young women specifically because of their race. The language used, the planning involved, the 4-against-2 dynamic, this has all the hallmarks of a hate crime." The story cut to interviews with other Roosevelt students, faces obscured but voices clear. Everyone knew Tyler and Brett were racist. They made comments all the time, but teachers never did anything. The Johnson twins are really nice. They didn't deserve what happened to them. I'm glad someone finally stood up to those bullies. Tuesday morning brought more developments. Principal Hayes was placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. Mr. Peterson was fired outright after additional videos surfaced showing him ignoring racist behavior in his kung fu classes. The 4 boys involved in the attack were expelled and faced a comprehensive legal battle that would follow them for years. Tyler's college prospects evaporated overnight. Brett's family business faced a boycott campaign that forced his father to close 2 locations. The football players lost their scholarships and their positions on the team. But the consequences went deeper than individual punishments. Roosevelt High School was forced to implement comprehensive anti-racism training for all staff. The district hired a full-time diversity coordinator. A new reporting system was established for harassment complaints, with external oversight to ensure they were properly investigated. Most importantly, the culture of silence that had protected bullies like Tyler and Brett was shattered. Students who had witnessed racism but stayed quiet began speaking up. Teachers who had ignored discriminatory behavior found themselves held accountable. The twins returned to school the following Monday as heroes. Students they'd never spoken to stopped them in the hallways to offer support. Teachers who had previously overlooked them went out of their way to be encouraging. The Kung Fu program was restructured under new leadership, with an emphasis on respect, discipline, and anti-bullying. The twins were offered leadership positions, which they accepted with the understanding that they would help create the inclusive environment they'd always wanted. "You know what the best part is?" Kaya said, as they walked through the hallways that had once felt hostile. "What? We didn't just defend ourselves. We changed everything." Amara smiled, watching younger students walk with confidence they'd never shown before. Darius was right. Sometimes the only way to get respect is to demand it. The video that had started as evidence of an attack had become something much more powerful. Proof that standing up to injustice, even when the odds are against you, can transform not just your own life, but an entire community. Justice had been served, and it had been served by two sisters who refused to be victims. 6 months later, the Jefferson Community Center buzzed with activity every Saturday morning. 23 young black girls, ranging in age from 12 to 17, filled the multi-purpose room as Kaya and Amara Johnson led them through self-defense drills that would have seemed impossible just a year ago. "Remember, it's not about being the strongest person in the room," Amara called out, watching as her students practiced the pressure point techniques Darius had taught her. "It's about being the smartest. And the most prepared," Kaya added, demonstrating a defensive counter that sent her sparring partner, a college volunteer, stumbling backward with a surprised laugh. The Sisters Stand Strong program had grown beyond anything the twins had imagined when they first pitched the idea to the community center director. What started as a simple self-defense class had evolved into a comprehensive empowerment program that included martial arts training, conflict resolution, academic tutoring, and mentorship. "Miss Kaya, can you show us that move again?" asked Destiny, a 14-year-old whose confidence had transformed over the past 4 months. When she'd first arrived, she could barely make eye contact. Now she stood tall, her voice clear and strong. "The one where you redirect their energy?" "Sure." Kaya positioned herself as her volunteer partner approached with a mock attack. In one fluid motion, she used his momentum to send him stumbling past her while placing herself in perfect position for a counterstrike. "See how I didn't try to match his strength? I used his own force against him." The girls nodded, immediately pairing off to practice the technique themselves. The room filled with the sounds of instruction, encouragement, and occasional laughter, as someone executed a move particularly well. Darius watched from the corner, arms crossed and wearing the proud smile that had become his permanent expression during these Saturday sessions. "You two have come a long way," he said as the twins took a water break. "We had a good teacher," Amara replied, wiping sweat from her forehead. "The teacher just showed you the techniques. You two did the real work, turning pain into purpose." Meanwhile, across the state, Tyler Richardson sat in his new bedroom in a town where nobody knew his name or his story. His family had relocated after the video made staying impossible. But the internet followed everywhere. College prospects had evaporated. Former friends had cut contact. Even job applications at local restaurants were rejected once employers Googled his name. His phone buzzed with a notification. Another comment on the video that continued to resurface every few months, keeping his humiliation fresh. Someone had tagged him. "Hey Tyler, how's it feel to get beaten up by girls?" He threw the phone across the room, watching it hit the wall and clatter to the floor. 6 months later, and the anger hadn't faded. If anything, it had grown stronger, fed by isolation and the constant reminder that his actions had consequences he couldn't escape. "Tyler, dinner," his mother called from downstairs, her voice carrying none of the warmth it once had. The move had been hard on the whole family. His father's business had suffered from the negative publicity. His mother could barely show her face at the country club. At dinner, the conversation was stilted and uncomfortable, as it had been for months. "The guidance counselor at your new school called," his father said, without looking up from his plate. She wants to discuss your college applications. What's the point? Tyler muttered. No decent school will take me. Maybe if you'd shown some remorse. Remorse for what? Standing up for myself? His parents exchanged the look they'd been sharing more and more frequently. A mixture of disappointment and recognition that their son had fundamentally failed to learn from his experience. Those girls destroyed our family, Tyler continued, his voice rising. And everyone acts like they're heroes. Those girls defended themselves, his mother said quietly. You attacked them, Tyler. 4 against 2. What did you expect would happen? I expected them to know their place. The words hung in the air like poison, and his parents finally understood that their son hadn't learned anything at all. The video had cost him his future, but it hadn't changed his heart. Back at the community center, the twins were unaware of Tyler's continued bitterness. They were focused on building something positive from their experience. All right, everyone circle up, Amara called as the formal training session ended. Time for reflections. This had become their weekly tradition, each participant sharing something they'd learned, accomplished, or overcome since the previous session. I used the confidence breathing technique before my presentation in English class, shared Maya, a quiet sophomore. I didn't let my voice shake, even when some kids tried to interrupt me. I reported a teacher who made a racist comment, added Jasmine, a senior who'd joined the program after seeing the viral video. The principal actually listened this time because I documented everything like you taught us. The stories continued around the circle. Small victories and major breakthroughs, moments of courage that rippled out into families, schools, and neighborhoods. Brett Morrison, meanwhile, was serving his court-ordered community service at a food bank in another district. The work was humbling, sorting donations, cleaning floors, serving meals to people his family had always ignored. Unlike Tyler, the experience was slowly changing him. You're doing better, said Ms. Williams, the volunteer coordinator who supervised his service. When you first started, you acted like this was beneath you. Brett nodded, continuing to stock shelves with canned goods. I guess I'm learning some things. About what? He paused, considering his words carefully. About how my actions affected people. About how I treated people who didn't deserve it. It wasn't a complete transformation. Brett still carried resentment about how his life had changed. But unlike Tyler, he was beginning to understand that his consequences were earned, not inflicted by vindictive enemies. As the community center session ended and participants began filtering out with their families, the twins stayed behind to clean up and prepare for the following week. You know what I realized today? Kaya said, stacking practice mats in the storage closet. What's that? Some people never learn. Tyler's probably still angry, still blaming us for his problems. You think about him often? Sometimes. Not with anger anymore, just pity, I guess. He had a chance to grow from this, but he chose bitterness instead. That's his choice to make. We chose differently. Their mother approached, carrying a folder full of paperwork. The Community Center Board approved our proposal for the expanded program. Starting in the fall, we'll have 3 sessions a week and funding for transportation so girls from across the city can participate. Seriously? Amara's face lit up with excitement. Seriously. They said, what you two have built here is exactly what the community needs. As they locked up the community center and walked to their car, the twins reflected on how completely their lives had changed. They were no longer the invisible girls trying to navigate a hostile environment. They were leaders, mentors, and symbols of what was possible when you refused to accept injustice. Tyler and Brett made their choices, Amara said as they drove home. Tyler chose to stay angry and bitter. Brett's at least trying to change. But either way, that's not our responsibility anymore. No, it's not. We have more important things to focus on. That evening, as they reviewed applications from girls wanting to join the program, the twins felt the deep satisfaction that comes from turning personal pain into community healing. They had faced their demons and won, but more importantly, they had created a path for others to do the same. Somewhere across the state, Tyler Richardson stared at his ceiling, consumed by a bitterness that would likely follow him for years. But his ongoing anger was no longer their burden to carry. The scared girls who had walked into that kung fu class months ago were gone forever, replaced by confident young women who understood that true strength comes not from the ability to fight, but from the courage to stand up for what's right, and the wisdom to choose growth over grudges. Their story had become bigger than just their own survival. It had become a blueprint for resistance, resilience, and the power of choosing your own path forward, regardless of what others choose for themselves. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please like the video and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.